Do you want to know if you should be training to muscular failure? In this video, I'm going to outline the pros and the cons of going to failure using a systematic review from Alexandra and colleagues. First, let's define what muscular failure is. Muscular failure, for the purposes of this conversation, is going to be an inability to complete another rep without significant form degradation. So if we're on a bicep curl and it's just stopping here, that's failure. If we have to do this, that's failure. Now, let's start talking about the pros of failure training. The first pro that we're going to have with failure training is that per any individual set, failure training is going to give you a bit more stimulus and a bit more muscle growth. One of the main reasons that you see this effect is because taking a set to failure allows you to get more reps in that set, which increases total volume. Volume being reps times sets times weight, at least in the purposes of the literature. One of the things that's very clear from the literature is that volume is going to be the key thing that grows skeletal muscle. So in a one set instance, getting more reps leads to more volume in that set. This represents the amount of reps that you could have gone. This represents the amount of reps that you can get not going to failure, leaving 2 reps in the tank versus going to failure. You can see the volume, sets times reps times weight here, is going to be higher. And we know that, again, volume is going to be the main factor that causes muscle growth. In the literature, when these two things are equated, so volume is equated, the difference in hypertrophy between these two groups is roughly equal. The last benefit of failure training, and probably one of the biggest, is that it's very time effective. If you need to get a large amount of stimulus in any one given set or very few given sets, taking your sets to failure allows you to shrink your workout time substantially. The same stimulus that you could get from, let's say, 5 sets of submaximal training, leaving 2 reps in the tank, you might be able to get from 2 or 3 sets completely to failure. And fatigue likely doesn't matter to us in this instance. So if you're someone that's limited on time, I highly recommend taking your sets to failure and probably training full body with agonist-antagonist supersets. You can really condense that workout. You might even be able to get it done in like 20 minutes. Next, let's get into the cons of failure training. The first con is going to be slightly worse strength and power outcomes. Both strength and power are skills that require you to give maximal effort. And if you're not able to give this maximal effort, you're likely not training the skill in the best way possible. When you frequently go to muscular failure, your reps and relative effort drop off. So you might be able to get 5 reps on your first set, but then you're so fatigued, you might only be able to get 2. So you're getting less total touches with the amount of weight or the amount of reps required to grow strength or power. Versus training with some amount of reps in the tank, it allows you to give a higher performance in any given set. Your reps might not fall off at all. You might be able to get sets of 5, sets of 5, sets of 5, etc. So you get more touches at that skill in a very specific way. The next con of failure training is going to be slower recovery. Again, thinking back a little bit, this may not apply if you only have 2 or 3 days to get into the gym. So in that instance, you likely can still do it. But if you're someone that's an athlete and lifting or in the gym 6 days a week, slower recovery can be a very big cost. One of the reasons for this slower recovery is because fatigue is likely additive or exponential the closer you go to failures. A set of 4 reps from failure is probably not very fatiguing at all. A set of 2 reps from failure is a big jump up in fatigue. And then a set completely failure is a humongous jump up in fatigue. And we know that stimulus is likely diminishing returns as you get closer and closer to failure. The last big con of failure training is that it's going to be a slightly higher increased risk of injury. The closer you get to your maximal capability of your body, the more likely things are go wrong, tissues to start to break down, the more likely to experience a minor or major injury. Lastly, let's talk about who can benefit from failure training. The first population that could potentially benefit from going closer to failure is intermediate or advanced athletes that have a lagging body part that just won't seem to grow. If you're someone that has a lagging muscle group, going closer to failure might be the change that's needed to either shift those muscle fibers to type 2 or give you that superlative stimulus that you need to get that muscle group to catch up. Though this is not true in all cases, it is something to toy around with. The second population that could benefit from going to failure is those short on time. We touched on this earlier, but you get more stimulus for less total sets and less total time in the gym. It's a win if you're short on time. The next way someone can benefit from going to failure is if they have muscles that tend to recover very easily or are hard to mechanically load and just don't seem to get sore. I don't know about you, but I could train my lateral delts 4 to 5 times a week, and they very rarely have soreness lasting longer than a day. This is a muscle group that I can likely ramp up the stimulus on and not necessarily pay that fatigue cost. Good examples of this, personally and in anecdotes with clients, lateral delts and biceps are two common culprits for this. The main reason for that is because recovery in this instance likely isn't the limiting factor. So now we've outlined the pros and the cons of training to failure and who might benefit from it. Let's bring it all home. In general, the literature tends to show roughly equal hypertrophy outcomes from training to failure and not training to failure when volume is equated. However, when you look at a term in terms of a week or a month, training not to failure or with reps in reserve allow you to accrue greater volume at a slightly lower injury risk. So month in and month out, at the 6-month period at the year, you were able to do more total volume because you're able to have more sets, more reps, etc. over time because you're not paying that fatigue cost. And we do know that volume is the key driver of hypertrophy. Training short of failure and progressing closer to failure in your mesocycles allows you to accrue the most amount of volume in terms of the big picture. Some practical recommendations is to start your mesocycle somewhere around 3 to 4 reps from failure, 4 if you're a beginner, 3 if you're a little bit more intermediate and advanced, and you can gradually start upping your relative effort by either adding load or beating your reps until you get all the way up to failure, just touching failure for like 1 week and then deloading after that. This ensures that you get the benefits of failure without necessarily paying the large cost. Hope this helped.